Hello everyone, today I wanted to make a different video that's not a review or a ranking. Today I want to share with you 10 films that I love that everyone else just seems to hate. I know these are not great films that I'm going to mention. They have their flaws, but these are films that I personally love. So I may get a lot of flack for this, but again, this is just my personal opinion. So feel free down in the comments below, share 10 films that you love that everybody else just seems to hate. It can even differ from my list. Feel free to share them down below. Here we go. Starting off at number 10 is Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. This is a film that got a lot of hate. I actually thought the theatrical version was an okay film. I didn't love it. I liked it a lot. The Ultimate Edition, which is pretty much the director's cut, which should have been the film, is amazing. I think this movie gets a lot of flack. I love this movie. Now, I know Lex Luthor is a bit kind of quirky. He's like Willy Wonka on crack. But he reminds me a little bit of the 90s Lex Luthor, mixed in with the mad scientist from the early comics. I love Henry Cavill as Superman in this. And in the extended cut, he really gets to shine more as Clark Kent. I love Ben Affleck as Batman. He just embodies the perfect Batman from the comics onward. Even his Bruce Wayne reminds me a bit of the animated series. He's a darker, more hardened Batman Bruce Wayne. But I love the whole story here of their two ideologies clashing. I love that opening on Metropolis. Was this movie overstuffed? Yes. But I did like Wonder Woman's introduction, the introduction of the Justice League, and even the Doomsday stuff, even though he wasn't 100% like Doomsday. He was an orc. I love that stuff. And it was really a great tale about this superpowered being that's like a god living among people and how human beings would really treat a Superman. If a Superman existed in our world, he'd be treated this way. And I like the themes. This film was not afraid to go a bit darker and be more grounded. And at some moments, it had vibes of The Dark Knight with the intensity of it, that Capitol Hill explosion, and different things like that. I love the influence from Dark Knight Returns in that fight. The music by Hans Zimmer. This film, it's not the best movie out of Batman or Superman, but it's not the worst. And this is a film that I personally loved, even more so than Justice League. After that is Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Now, the Star Wars movies have been kind of interesting under the Disney reign. Some are hit, some are miss, but I love Rogue One. A lot of people did not like this. I actually think the characters are more relatable and have more charisma than anybody in the sequel trilogy, and this actually feels like a Star Wars film. It's that perfect blend of the prequel world and the original world of Star Wars, even having some nods to the original films. This just felt like the original trilogy. It was nice seeing the Empire back. Even with some of the funny CGI, it was nice seeing Grand Moff Tarkin, Princess Leia, has the best Darth Vader sequence where he just totally lets his force powers go unleashed in that hallway. I love it. I love Jyn Erso. I love Cassian Andor. I love the actors in this. Great cast, and it's just heartbreaking seeing them on a suicide mission. It shows us new worlds, goes back to old mythology from the expanded universe, and the Clone Wars series. Overall, this is a film to me, out of all the new films, that felt the most like Star Wars, and I proudly put it in between the prequel and original trilogies. Next is Daredevil from 2003. Now, Daredevil is another Ben Affleck superhero film that gets a lot of hate. It did have some embellishments from the comics, but I like both versions. I saw this on my birthday. I love the PG-13 version, and I really love the director's cut that's rated R. He doesn't end up with Elektra in that version. There's some differences, and it does feel like an R movie. It's two totally different movies. That PG-13 one is more of a superhero movie. And so is the R-rated version, but it's really about the little guy not getting ahead. It's really about Matt Murdock fighting for the little person, the little man inside this belly of Hell's Kitchen, and you really get to see how much of an intimidating force Kingpin is. The director's cut also has a longer fight. I love this movie with the soundtrack. Want Back Down by Fuel, Bring Me to Life by Evanescence. That was my 2003 right there. I love the suit. There's a lot of things that the Netflix show has in common with this, even though I think that did Daredevil and adapted it better from comic to screen. However, this is just a good movie for me. Like, I love this movie. I love the story, him going through flashbacks. You get to see his whole life up to this certain point. Colin Farrell is just evil as Bullseye. And it's interesting. It's very much an early 2000s film. After that is Godzilla 1998. Godzilla 1998 is a very, very hated film. It's Zilla. It's not Godzilla. But you know what? I love this film. I saw it when I was 7. And you know what? He has more screen time, and it feels like a better plot than like some of the new Godzilla films. The human characters, even though some are more annoying, like Audrey, they're still more interesting. I love it as a movie in itself. You know, it teases it, but you actually get to see Godzilla, even though he's like an iguana. I love that whole story, the Jurassic Park fill with the babies in like the subway, which pretty much was stolen in 2014 when they used the same story thread. So there's a lot of story threads here between that and then having a signal relayed in a stadium that the new film's borrowed from. And I love the soundtrack. You have that cover of Kashmir with Come With Me by Puff Daddy, Heroes by the Wallflowers, Deeper Underground by Jamiroquai, and No Shelter by Rage Against the Machine. Seems like bad movies have great soundtracks, and this is no exception, but I just love Godzilla 1998. It's a film that I never get tired of. It never bores me, you know? It's one of those films that always entertains me every time I watch it, and it's even better on Blu-ray, so yeah. After that is Superman Returns. Now, this film is very much kind of like a retread of Superman the movie, kind of like the way Force Awakens is a retread of A New Hope. They do make Superman a bastard dad. There are some changes. Lex does date older women, but you know what? This had the kind of heart and just charm of the original Christopher Reeve films. It's funny because this is a very critically acclaimed film, but a lot of fans hated it, and I can see why. Man of Steel was a better Superman film, even though Superman Returns is a better film. But that being said, everybody wants a lighter Superman. They want their 20th century Superman. We got that in this. It's like the audience wasn't ready for either version of Superman, and I think Brandon Routh is underrated in this role. I wish they gave him more to do. The video game is better than the movie, but I love the movie. I love him coming back to Earth after 5 years, everybody moving on, Lois Lane moving on, having a kid you find out later is Superman's kid. Kevin Spacey is great as Lex Luthor with Parker Posey. And this is a really good movie that goes back to the core of the original two Donner films and then adds a new element to it. They modernize it with certain saves, and it's just nice seeing a Superman back. You know, we get to see like he leaves and he returns, and it's like what happens when there is no Superman in the world? And that's the repercussions of this movie. I love that part where Lois Lane says the world doesn't need a Superman, we're fine without you. And he's like talking to her. They have that flight on the roof. And he's just like, oh yeah, well, every day I hear people crying out for a Superman. And that was a very powerful moment. There's also a lot of cool nods to the early 40s comics. And yeah, I just wish Bryan Singer added the action of like some of the X-Men movies to this film. I wish he went full Wrath of Khan. I would have loved to see a follow-up. Brandon Routh with a mullet going after Brainiac. But you know what? Even though this isn't the greatest Superman film ever made, I still think it gets a lot of flack, and I love this movie. Even the opening with John Ottman's rendition of the Williams score is great. So yeah, I love that with the inclusion of Marlon Brando as Jor-El. It really adds to the film and makes it feel like it's a part of the Donner universe. After that is The Matrix Reloaded. This is a film that gets a lot of hate, but I love The Matrix Reloaded. It's a slow burn, but I love Agent Smith, all the agents fighting, those two twins, a Merovingian. Oh man, I love the freeway chase. You know, you have Mona Lisa Overdrive by Juno Reactor. I love that part. And to the final revelation of what the Matrix really is and what's really going on. It set up a lot of cool stuff for the final film, and really the third film is what drops the ball for me, but I love Reloaded. I think it's a worthy sequel to the original. Yeah, it convolutes it a bit. It gets a little bit silly, but it also enhances things. It also brings new ideas to this world of the Matrix and to Zion. And I really love this sequel. Speaking of sequels, let's talk about prequels. I love all three of the Star Wars prequels. Yeah, they're silly, but you know what? They're better than the sequel trilogy. Yes, I said it. Heresy to some. I love the Duel of the Fates fight. And if anything, I think George Lucas should have made Anakin a bit older. They should have went the PG-13 route, like Revenge of the Sith, from the start. But I love that. Jango Fett all the worlds. Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. Hayden Christensen is a bit wooden as Anakin, but I love him in Revenge of the Sith. Man, this is a good little trilogy, a good arc. And it's really about the fall of the Republic, the rise of Darth Vader, and ultimately the failure of the Jedi. And that's something very different. You know, we see this republic here, but how does it become an empire? How does something like the Star Wars, I guess, Galactic Civil War actually start? How is there a rebellion and an empire? And George Lucas shows us that. And sometimes you look around the news and stuff, see politics, people arguing with one another, a populist leader, and you're like, that's not too far off, man. It's the Roman Empire, man, greed and everything else. So it's interesting seeing those elements put in there, and they're very underrated. And just because they're silly moments, it's dismissed as a kid's film. I actually think it's a deep film and a great trilogy for the Star Wars prequels. It goes in well with the original. It doesn't damage the originals in any way. It just shows us a different world that was before the world we saw in the original 3 films. Speaking of George Lucas, there's also Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. This has some silly, stupid moments. Yeah, I don't like the nuke fridge scene. Other stuff, CGI monkeys, just CGI period compared to the first 3. But you know what I love about it? The first 3 films were set in the 30s. They were based on serials and action adventure stuff of that period. It felt like that period. And this, with Area 51, Russians, and aliens, it feels like the 50s. A lot of the B movies and stuff you saw in the 50s. And in that way, it honors the time period and feels like a natural progression from the stuff in the 30s in the original films. I love the introduction of Shia LaBeouf as Mutt, Indiana Jones' son. I love the return of Marion Ravenwood. I wish they had her a bit more like she was in the first film. And John Hurt was kind of wasted, but I like some of the ant stuff. I love Cate Blanchett as a villain. It does get crazy, but it has some cool moments at Akator and other things like that. The little motorcycle chase around the campus, that was great. It has its moments, to say the least. And it definitely has more action than the first 3. Like, Indy does more stuff in this than he did in the first 3. He got hurt in the earlier ones. In this one, he's just like, okay, he misses something. He's like, damn, I thought that was closer. But I do want to see one more Indiana Jones that maybe is a bit more like the first 3 films. Nevertheless, I don't think this is the worst film ever, and I actually quite enjoy it. I enjoyed it more than Temple of Doom. Even though Temple of Doom is a better made film, I just enjoy this one more. After that is Cowboys and Aliens. Now, this is a film that I don't know if it's hated or just underrated, but I love this film. Jon Favreau directed this. I love Daniel Craig. He has a very Steve McQueen vibe here. I love Harrison Ford, Olivia Wilde in this. And it's one of those films that's, if it was just a Western, it'd be a straight up Western. It's like From Dusk Till Dawn or Predator, where it like starts off as one type of genre and then introduces like a monster or like sci-fi element, and it becomes a completely different film in the second half. And it pretty much has that vibe of like a science fiction Western film. Yeah, it's based on like a comic series, and I just love this movie. This is a cool movie because it plays it straight as a Western. If it was all a Western, I would have enjoyed it just as much, but then it adds aliens in there and adds a cool sci-fi twist, and I kind of like that. It's a very underrated Jon Favreau film. Lastly is Jurassic Park 3. Jurassic Park 3 is a film that does have some silly moments. It kind of damages the whole relationship between Sam Neill and Laura Dern's characters. They're not married, but you know what? Alan Grant still feels like Alan Grant, and he's back. He wasn't in Lost World. I love Ian Malcolm in Lost World, but this feels more like that first film. Even with the crazy Velociraptor dream, Alan. But I love it. The pterodactyls, the Kirbys, played by Tia Leone and William H. Macy, tricking Alan Grant into going on that island, and then introducing the Spinosaurus. Although I wanted to see a real adult T-Rex face him, not a baby T-Rex. Like, this is a bad monster. He beat a T-Rex. I'm like, that's a baby T-Rex. Have him go against the T-Rex that's on the other island from the first Jurassic Park. Anyways, I still love that. Love the humor. The only thing I have against this film is that it's just too short, but I love the Velociraptors, how they learn to communicate with them, the different traps they set, the different creatures, the different set pieces, seeing the different labs just abandoned and everything. Man, this is just a fun film that had the energy and just kind of enjoyability to it, like the first film that Lost World was very much missing. I enjoy Lost World for doing something different, but it was kind of bland and dull to me, where this really felt more like, spiritually at least, the first Jurassic Park. And I love all 3 of them, but Jurassic Park 3 was definitely, at the time, my favorite over Lost World. And yeah, that film gets a lot of hate, and I don't think it's as bad as what people say. Anyways, everyone, thank you for watching this. Feel free again to let me know 10 films that you love that it seems like everybody else just hates. Feel free to let me know. Have a friendly conversation down below. I want to read your comments down below. Let me know what films that you love that other people hate, that I might even hate. Just let me know down in the comments below. follow me on the Stardust app at Fred Film Fanatic, and check out these videos for more content. Feel free to subscribe for more videos. Till next time.